Hello guys, welcome back to this crazy story that I've enjoyed so much and love it. Anyways, last time we left off, Max finally got some communication with Twilight Sparkle. So then they both dealt with that nonsense, and now we're starting from scratch. I'm not sure what this is gonna entail, but hopefully it's something good. Anyways, let's hop right into it. Chapter 9, a fresh start. Neither of us got much sleep that night, mostly due to the coffee, even though I had only had barely half a cup. Well, we finally parted ways around 4:30 in the morning. Twilight had insisted that I sleep in her bed while she took the couch. She said it was to make up for the misunderstandings. I turned her down for the sake of comfort. I didn't feel right taking her bed from her, and I had been sleeping on the cushion bed for a week already. Besides, it was kind of comfy. No, we'd work on finding me a better sleeping arrangement later. For now, I was willing to keep using my cushion. Regardless of how comfy I thought my bedding was, I wasn't able to relax enough to get any decent sleep. I had given up on getting any sleep around sunrise. Instead, I just waited in the kitchen for Twilight to wake up. Sitting at the kitchen table with my head in my hands, I stared out the window, absent-mindedly watching as the ponies of Ponyville woke up and started their day. I was first aware of Twilight's presence when I heard the sound of hooves on the stairs. She walked into the kitchen looking as bad as I felt. Her hair and her feathers were a mess, and she had dark circles under her eyes. It looked like she got about as much sleep as I did. I observed as I watched her walk over and collapse in the chair across the table. She sighed heavily and looked at me. Good morning, she stammered, trying and failing to hold back a massive yawn. I lifted a hand in response, still gazing into space. You didn't get much sleep either, did you? I shook my head slightly. Would you like something to eat? I nodded and proceeded to rest my head on the table. I heard Twilight get up and start moving around the kitchen, and the sound of pots and pans filled the room. As Twilight worked, I kept my head on the table and closed my eyes, dozing slightly. Right. This is probably awkward. Hopefully it gets better, comfortable later on. After about 15 minutes, I heard the sound of something being placed on the table. Raising my head up slightly, I glanced at what it was. I shot up, my eyes widening. 3 placed upon the table, a stack of steaming hot pancakes covered completely in bacon. I shut up, my eyes widening. They're placed upon the table. Was a stack of steaming hot pancakes. Wait, there's 3 plates? Oh, there. Okay, they're placed upon the table. Okay, covered completely in maple syrup. Completely in maple syrup. I figured you might like something other than bits of apples and water. Twilight said, already working on more pancakes. The spatula grasped in her magic. I nodded, my mouth watering as I gazed at the pancakes like they were a gift from God. Reaching over and picking up the fork, I dug into the pancakes with gusto. I practically moaned with pleasure at the warm fluffiness. They were delicious. After eating nothing but the apples Twilight had been feeding me all week, the taste of pancakes was heavenly. Twilight giggled at my antics. I take it you like them? She asked, her tired eyes twinkling slightly. I nodded, still attempting to inhale the pancakes as quickly as possible. As I continued to scarf the fluffy wonders down my gullet, Twilight sat down across from me and started on her own pancakes, albeit with more reserve than me. Breakfast was a silent ordeal, both of us concentrating on our plates. I finished first, leaning back in my chair and patting my stomach with a happy sigh. Twilight gave me a smile as she continued eating. So, now that we are actually on the same page, is there anything you need to do today? Twilight asked, her mouth full of pancake. I've been doing everything I think needs to be done for you, but now that I know I can ask you, she chilled off, taking another bite of pancake as she waited for my reply. I looked around for a piece of paper and a writing utensil, but couldn't find one. Starting up, I shuffled out of the kitchen and ran into the main room of the library. Grabbing what I needed from Twilight's desk, I shuffled back into the kitchen just as Twilight was finishing her last few bits. Sitting back down, I scratched out my question on the paper before sliding it across the table to Twilight. Do you happen to have a razor? Her eyes widened and she choked on the food in her mouth as she inhaled sharply. Coughing and sputtering, she looked at me in horror. Yeah, that's something she wouldn't expect, a razor. Why would you need a razor? She shrieked, or at least tried to. I was more of a hacking wheeze, but the terror was still there. I quickly shook my head and waved my hands, trying to calm her down. Grabbing the paper, I hurriedly tried and explained myself. I was hoping to clean up my face. Still coughing and thumping her chest with a hoof, Twilight looked up from the paper at me with confusion on her face. I reached up and pulled at my scraggly beard for emphasis. Her eyes lit up in understanding. After she finally stopped her coughing fit, Twilight got up and left the room. While she was gone, I stood up and cleared the table, placing all the dirty dishes in the sink. I turned the water on and began to clean. I figured that I could at least help out around the house now that Twilight knew I wasn't just some stupid animal. I had just finished the last dish and placed it on placed it on the counter when Twilight returned. A single blade razor held in her magic. She passed it to me and grasped it gingerly. I stared down at it, studying the thing. It was like the old straight razors that barbers used to use. I looked at Twilight and raised an eyebrow. She seemed to understand my unasked question, and she lowered her head slightly, refusing to meet my eye. Don't ask me why I have it, but it's what you need, isn't it? I nodded once, heading over to the table. I picked up the quill and paper. Turning to Twilight, I handed my note to her. May I use your bathroom? But of course, Twilight said, a smile spreading across her face. You don't have to ask. Trotting out of the kitchen, she waved at me to follow her. We headed up the stairs to the second floor, leading me to the bathroom. She opened the door with her magic and ushered me inside. Help yourself to anything you may need, she said as I looked around the large bathroom. I'd never seen this room before. The times that Twilight had tried to wash me had been in a small bathroom just off of the main room downstairs. If you wanted to call it a bathroom, that is. There wasn't even a toilet. Twilight had later informed me that the room was originally intended to be used to wash clothes in, but she had to try to change it into a washroom for Spike. This bathroom was by far larger and certainly more comfortable. There was a toilet in the one corner with a large sink and a countertop next to it. A large shower bathtub rested in the opposite corner. The thing was large enough for me to lay down in it comfortably. Wait, you're laying down in the bathtub? I thought you were shaving, boy. I thought you were shaving. What? Towels are located under the sink. Just shout out if you need anything. I froze and looked back at her, raising an eyebrow at her choice of words. She stared up at me, confused, before she realized what she had said. Blushing, she slowly backed out of the bathroom. I mean, just flag me down if you need anything. If you need anything. She stammered, turning around. She dashed down the hallway, chuckling to myself. I closed the door, walked to the sink, turning on the water. I stood in my face as I waited for the water to heat up. My cheeks and chin were covered in coarse, scraggly beard that would have made a homeless man jealous. Back home, I used to shave on a daily basis to keep with the dress code at work. However, after 3 weeks of being ignored, my face was now covered in thick, coarse hairs. When the water had finally heated to a decent temperature, I held the razor underneath the stream. After all, I had heated a blade worked better than a cold one. Bringing the razor up to my face, I pulled my skin taut with my free hand. As the edge of the blade touched my skin, I hesitated for a second. I had never shaved this way before. I hope I don't Sweeney Tone myself. Taking a deep breath, I began to shave. A steady cloud of hair fell from my face as the blade slid across my hair. I had some difficulty getting the hairs on my neck due to the collar. Twilight had insisted that I keep it on for now. As a human wandering around town without a collar or any other means of identity, the owner could easily be picked up and shipped. Okay, what? Twilight had insisted that I keep it on for now. As a human wandering around town without a collar or any other means of identity of the owner could easily be picked up and shipped off to the pound. Not wanting to get separated from the one pony who had confided in my secret, and I had agreed to keep the collar on. It wasn't all that uncomfortable, actually. I carefully scraped my cheeks and chin clean of all the offensive hairs, but stopped when I got to my upper lip. I had been that kid that had started to get dirt stash in the 5th grade, but the 8th grade, I could grow a full mustache in a matter of days. My nickname around the middle school, as well as high school, had been Mustache Max, because I was the only one who could pull it off. At work, they had called me Mario, due to my Italian blood, and the fact that I looked just like him in the red uniform. Okay, what? I had my mustache for over 9 years. The mustache had made me who I was. I stared at my face in the mirror, my face hairless, except for the mustache still adorned on my face. I know it was silly, but even after all I had been through, after everything I'd seen in this new world, the sight of my mustache made me realize all I had left behind. My friends, my family, my co-workers, my life. It reminded me of everything it represented. Who I was. Realization, loving it. I stared at the mustache for a few more seconds before I brought the razor up to my lip and slowly began to clear the hairs away. As the hair fell from my face, I remembered the good times and the bad times of my past life. As I shaved, I remembered my hopes, my dreams, my fantasies. I remembered everything that had made me who I was. And as I cleared the last patch of hair from my lip, I let it all go. Oh, so you're doing what the girls do when they like cut their hair for some traumatic reason. I stared down into the sink, filled Okay, what? The mustache represented who I once was. Now it was time to move on and get a fresh start on life. I stared down into the sink filled with water and hair for several long seconds before starting and proceeded to empty the sink. Throwing the razor onto the countertop with a clatter, I gazed at my clean-shaven face one last time before turning into the shower, an amused expression on my face. I guess sentimental about the weird shit. I thought as I turned the water on, stripping down, I tossed the clothes Rarity had made for me onto the toilet lid and hopped in the shower. I emerged from the bathroom in a cloud of steam, drying my hair with a lavender towel. My hair had been medium length when I had first been thrown into the desert to fight for my life, but now it hung down in front of my eyes. It didn't really bother me that much, but I shouldn't probably ask Twilight if there was some way to get it cleaned up. Wait, what are you talking about? Oh, your hair. Okay. Get your hair cleaned up? That's why. Okay. I was lost in words. I headed down the stairs and found Twilight sitting on the couch, her copy of Your Human and You open in front of her. She looked up as I approached and gave me a quick smile. I raised an eyebrow at her and motioned the book. I was just thinking about how your presence here affects everything we know about humans in general, she said, looking back down at the book. She closed the book and ran her hoof over the cover, caressing it caringly. She smiled down at it like a mother would a newborn child. But back before I first moved to Ponyville, I used to spend all my time studying and reading every book I could get my hooves on. I thought all my problems could be solved simply by reading a book, she said, picking the large tome up in her hooves. Even after I moved here and made friends, there were times that I found myself returning to the pages of my books. She tore her gaze away from the book and looked up at me, a small smile on her face. I tilted my head to the side, confused at where she was going. But it would seem that you can't solve everything just by reading about it. You've shown me that. Grasping the book in her magic, she lifted it out of her hooves and into the air between us. Well, yeah. Like, why like, I feel like you were gonna learn that lesson the hard way, or this or what your friends tell you. Right. Okay. It would appear, she said, shooting me a mischievous glance, that my book on humans is now completely useless. With a flick of her head, she sent the massive tome flying through the air. It landed with a large thud in the trash, causing pieces of crumbled dope paper to fall on the floor. Standing up, Twilight stretched and yawned, her tongue poking out of her mouth slightly. It was really quite adorable, and I smiled at the sight. I have to go pick Spike up from Applejacks. You want to come along? She asked, picking up the two halves of what I had been. Okay, what? I have to go pick up. Oh, God damn it! I have to go. Why can't I say this? I have to go pick Spike up from Applejacks. You want to come along? She asked, picking the two halves of what had been the leash. A quick flash of magic at the strip of plastic was whole once more. I'll make it worth your while, she sang as she turned and waved the leash in my face. I chuckled at her silliness and nodded. I pulled my sack shirt over my head and Twilight clipped the leash on me before heading to the door. Reaching out a hoof and grasping the doorknob, she turned back and looked up at me. This is it, she said, a large smile slowly spreading across her face. A fresh start. Twisting the knob, she thrust open the door and stepped out into the sunlight. The sound of birds chirping and the laughter of ponies filled the air, clouds drifting lazily through the rich blue sky. A warm breeze whispered gently as the grass and trees swayed back and forth. It was a perfect day. As I stepped out into the sun, Twilight smiled at me, a gentle tug of the leash, and she was off. I followed as she called back over her shoulder, "Let's go write our own book on humans." She's not serious, is she? I hope not. Anyways, that is chapter 9 and 13 minutes. This is not long enough for me. Anyways, chapter 10 should be in the next second. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching the first part of this video, I think. Don't know. See you in chapter 10. Hey guys, I know you guys just got done reading chapter. Whoa. Listen, I know I just got done reading chapter 10. Not 10, chapter 9. I feel like I'm gonna need to start this like a normal video, but let's just hop right into chapter 10, shall we? Having fun with your human. As the next few weeks went by, the quality of my new life in Equestria increased immensely, determined to make me feel more comfortable at home. Twilight spent an entire day clearing out the basement of all her old junk and lab equipment. Once the basement was emptied and clean, Twilight bought a decent-sized bed and stuck it down there. A desk, writing utensils, and my own bookshelf soon followed, and by the end of the day, I had my own room in the library. There were some bumps along the way, though, still fighting off a lifetime of beliefs. There were instances where Twilight would slip back into the old habit of treating me like an animal, but a gentle nudge and a small smile, and she would immediately correct herself and apologize multiple times. Good. I spent most of my free time around home either talking with Twilight or reading the mini books around the library. During open hours, when ponies would come in and go at random, I would take my books and head down into the basement where I could read without fear of being discovered. Twilight installed a lock on the basement door, however, just in case. It was an interesting experience the first time I used it, as she had accidentally put it on the outside of the basement door. That meant that when locked, I was unable to remove myself from the basement. It took Twilight several hours to discover her mistake. Even with me pounding on the door, she had tears in her eyes as she explained over and over again that it was an accident and that she didn't do it on purpose. I was quick to forgive her, but she apparently wanted me to know how sorry she was, so before she switched the lock around, she locked herself in the basement and told me to let her out after the same amount of time had passed. After her sentence was up, she came out and apologized once more before finally moving on. I didn't have the heart to tell her I had unlocked the doors hours ago. Really? When the library closed and the last guest had left, I would re-emerge from the basement and hang with Twilight and Spike. Spike had taken the news that I was intelligent with mixed results. He was terrified of me when I first arrived. With knowledge that I was as intelligent as a pony, his fears seemed to grow. In fact, he locked himself in Twilight's room for several days and refused to come out. After the fourth day, I decided that I should go in after him. Well, Twilight decided that, and apparently I agreed with her without actually remembering doing it. Twilight magically unlocked the door and slipped in to see her. Yes, just let him face his fears. I want to know what Rarity's deal is with this, though. We gotta tell Spike, because, we live with him now, but seriously, I want to know why Rarity is so hung up on us, or so hung up on her opinion. I found him hidden within his basket, trying to hide beneath his blanket. I thought his poor little heart was going to stop when he saw me in the room with him. He sat perfectly still, frozen in fear, until I pulled a large emerald out from behind my back and offered it to him. A small tip from Twilight. Apparently the little dragon assumes my college educator's worth in gems as a snack. His face had lit up, and instead of fear, it had held confusion. I had left him with his several $1,000 snack and had retreated downstairs. Several minutes later, Spike had ventured hesitantly downstairs with some encouragement from Twilight. He was still worried, but it seemed that he no longer was scared witless of me. Eventually, we had gotten Spike to warm up to me, and he promised not to tell anyone about me being intelligent. A large ruby and some ice cream sealed the deal. Haha. As the days came out and went, Twilight and I continued to bond, and our friendship continued to grow. She would ask me questions about my old world, and I would answer them to the best of my ability. In turn, I would ask her about her world, and it was weird to discover all the things that were similar to what I used to know, but so different at the same time. I wasn't willing to believe everything Twilight told me, however I found it hard to believe, and still do to this very day. That Celestia did, in fact, have control over Equestria's sun, and that her sister controlled their moon. I was very skeptical of that, but Twilight kept insisting it was true. I tried to inform her that there was no way that anything could have that power to move a star, but she was adamantly stuck to her belief. Realizing that we would never see eye to eye on the subject, we eventually decided to just let the other believe what they wanted to, and we moved on to happier topics. Are you gonna tell her about your nightmares that you had the first days you were here? That's my question. We would spend hours just communicating with one another. When no one was looking, of course, we'd be sitting down comfortably in the library, Twilight chatting while sipping on tea or coffee. Me with my papers, quills, and ice water. I just liked coffee, hated tea, and Twilight didn't have any sugary beverages in the library. The only downside to our conversation was the fact that my hand would cramp up after several hours from the writing I had to do. Luckily, Twilight would find a way around this. It was something called hoof language, and it was very similar to sign language back home, except instead of using your hands and fingers, you used your back and front hooves in various combinations. To tap and sign out their message, since not many ponies knew of hoof language, there was no major risk with me using it in public, as most ponies would believe that I was just acting like a human. Twilight, of course, would be able to understand me, for she knew hoof language by heart, because why not? Yeah. Twilight's that type of pony. Like, if she would find something interesting, she's gonna learn all about it and just master it within a couple days. At first, I thought I would have difficulty using hoof language. I obviously had no hooves, but soon I found out that my hands worked just fine, if not better. It took me almost a week to learn most of the basic rhythms and beats, but I was soon able to communicate almost flawlessly with Twilight without the use of paper. There were some times I had to spend a couple of minutes getting a message across if I didn't know the proper word, but for the most part, it was almost like talking again. It sure made life a lot easier for me. It was a beautiful summer morning. The sun was shining brightly down upon Ponyville. The sky was bright blue, and it was clear except for a few clouds. The temperature was a warm 76 degrees, and everyone was outside enjoying the wonderful day. Everyone except me. I had my ass planted on the couch inside the cool library, my feet up on the coffee table, and nice cold water in my hands. and a book on ancient griffin culture upon in my lap. It was a Saturday, so there was no fear of some pony barging in on me. But just to be sure, I had closed most of the shades. Didn't want a pony to pass by the window, glance in, and see me reading. What kind of reaction would that initiate? That's my question. Like, what? Sipping on my water, I turned the page and continued to read about the old wars of the Griffins. Their clans were also bickering over territory, and they even drew the other races into some of their conflicts. They were known for their mercenaries, as well as their brutal fighting skills. They actually reminded me a lot about humans from my world, always fighting with each other over something as trivial as land, wealth, or power. The only difference was that Griffins didn't have access to fully automatic weapons and weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, that's our downside here. Like, anyone could just choose to make something with complete power and just decide to use it. That's our downside of living in this world. I had just taken another mouthful of water when the front door's handle began to jiggle. I inhaled sharply and began to choke as some water went down the wrong pipe. Sputtering and coughing, I quickly closed the door and shoved it in between the cushions of the couch. Jumping up, I dumped my water into a nearby plant and dove upon my cushion that we still kept in the library. It was more for show, but I still used it sometimes. I threw my glass across the room, and it shattered against the wall right as the front door swung open. Twilight stood in the doorway, blinking slowly. She looked between the shattered remains of the glass on the wall and me splayed out on my cushion, an innocent expression on my face. Okay. You thought I was somebody else, didn't you? She asked, amused. I just lay there staring up at her, trying to hold in another cough. Twilight sighed and shook her head, a small smile playing across her lips. She tried her ear and shut the door behind her, laughing softly to herself. You never cease to amaze me, she said, bopping me in the leg with her hoof as she passed. I coughed once and sat up. She walked over to the remains of the glass, and with a quick flash of magic, the glass was whole once more. Placing the new glass on the coffee table, she turned to me, an angry expression on her face. You're lucky I can fix those things so easily, otherwise we'd have a problem, I responded with poise and dignity. I blew a loud raspberry at her, unable to keep her angry face any longer. Twilight giggled at my response. I responded with poise and dignity. I blew a loud raspberry at her, unable to keep her angry face any longer. Twilight giggled at my response. I don't know that. Okay. Standing up, I brushed myself off and turned to my lavender friend. Where were you this morning? I asked, stumping my feet and clapping in a quick combination. I was out getting certain plans ready for today, she said, walking around me and heading towards the kitchen. What plans? The great thing about hoof language is that even though it helps for you to be looking at the individual using it, it's not necessary while being mostly signs. It's also used a mixture of rhythmic vibrations to relay the message. Plans with my friends. Twilight called back to me, a small smirk on her face. I narrowed my eyes at her. What are you up to, Twilight? Entering the kitchen, she pulled a wicker basket out of one of the lower cupboards. Putting it on kitchen table, she went over to the refrigerator and started to pull out pre-made sandwiches and drinks. She placed them into the basket along with a checkered blanket. What plans? I asked again. Approaching the table and looking into the basket, each of the sandwiches were made with hay, grass, or flowers. I wrinkled my nose in disgust. While they ate some of the same food as humans, ponies' diets also consisted of food that I could not possibly enjoy or digest, mainly plants. What were your plans for today? Twilight asked as she double-checked if she had everything. Grabbing the basket in her teeth, she exited the kitchen, placing the loaded basket near the front door. She placed one of the large umbrellas from the coat close next to her. Okay. Why? I asked as Twilight started to head up the stairs. She stopped midway up and looked back at me, smirking again. How would you like to come to the beach with me and my friends? Yes. Okay, you're happy. I danced around with the room, my hands clapping at my answer as my feet did a little jiggle. Twilight laughed as she continued up the stairs. Okay. She calmed down as she rooted around the bathroom closet. Just let me grab a towel for both of us and we'll be off. Oh, we're going now? What? As she fished around for the towels, I pulled the book I had hidden in the couch out of its hiding place and placed it back on the shelf. Rule 13 of living with Twilight: always put the book back where it goes, no exceptions. Twilight came down with the towels and placed them on top of the basket. Grabbing the leash she attached to my collar, grabbed the basket, towels, and umbrellas in her magic, and headed to the front door. She grabbed the doorknob in her hoof, but hesitated, turning back towards me. She grinned slightly. I almost forgot. The Rarity will be joining us. I winced at this. Our first meeting hadn't been the best. And I had learned that her and Twilight had fought about Twilight keeping me. Luckily, Twilight had managed to smooth everything over with Rarity, and the pair were still friends. However, ever since the first time I had met her, Rarity had been going out of her way to avoid me. Both Twilight and I didn't know why she didn't want anything to do with me, but we both agreed that it would probably be best to limit the time I was near her. Oh, that's annoying. Like, what does she have against us? Like, it's our species. It's not particularly us, but it's just our species. So, I'll be on my best behavior. Twilight nodded once, doubt still on her face. But nonetheless, she opened the door and we walked outside. I stretched in the sunlight as Twilight made sure the door was locked, satisfied we headed off. We'll be meeting up with every pony at the beach, Twilight said softly to me as we walked. I nodded, barely moving my head, keeping slightly behind Twilight. I kept my face blank and expressions. Oh, this is so exciting, Twilight squealed, a smile on her face. Another possible chapter, having fun with a human. I groaned and rolled my eyes. Ever since Twilight had gotten rid of your human and you, she had been treating everything we had done as a part of a learning experience. She even had taken to naming each event. Luckily, she hadn't started actually write anything down yet. Sure. Fortunately, Twilight calmed down before we reached downtown. We headed through the marketplace, ponies stopping to say hi to Twilight or ask how her day was going. She answered each of them with a smile as we made our way steadily through the crowd. Is Spike already at the beach? I asked then when there was a lull. No, he's a full. Yeah, he's full sitting the what? No, he is full sitting the Cutie Crusaders for Applejack and Rarity. Twilight replied, glancing around to make sure that nobody was looking at her. It'll just be us girls. It'll just be us and the girls. He had almost reached the edge of town when we were flagged down by a mare with a fuchsia coat and a rosy mane. Rosy. Never fuchsia. Okay, I don't even know what fuchsia is. Hey, Twilight! Hey, Twilight! Twilight stopped in her tracks and turned to the mare. Hey, Charity, what's up? The mare cheerily smiled at Twilight. I just wanted to say thank you for your help the other day with my class. I wasn't sure I was going to teach any of the unicorns about magic theory until you showed up. Twilight blushed at this comment. Refusing to meet Charlie's eyes, she waved a hoof at the mare. It was no trouble at all. I was just happy to be able to teach eager young minds. Nonetheless, I still appreciate what you did for me, Charlie said before she noticed what Twilight was carrying. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I interrupting something? She asked, her ears splayed backwards. Oh, no, of course not, Twilight reassured her, smiling. I was just heading to the beach with some of my friends and my human. Shirley looked up at me with Shirley looked up at me with wide eyes. This fine specimen is yours? She asked, her eyes slowly drifting over my frame. How long have you had him? Several weeks now, actually, Twilight said, tilting her head slightly to the side. Why? No reason, Shirley said offhandedly, her eyes drifting lower. A weird light seemed to appear in her eyes as she studied me. You have to let me borrow him sometimes. Even though I was wearing my sack pants, I could still feel her gaze burning into my groin. What? Twilight asked, her face lighting up red and her mouth agape. Charlie giggled and swaying her hips walked off, leaving Twilight and flustered and confused. As we stared after her, I slowly turned to Twilight. Let us never speak of this. I concur, Twilight said, turning around abruptly and heading back down the path. I cast one last glance after Charlie before following behind Twilight. That's so weird. Don't like it. We're used as sex toys technically in this world, and I don't like that. The remainder of our trip was thankfully uneventful. Once we were out of Ponyville, we were able to talk more freely. We walked for a good while, but since it was such a nice day, neither of us really cared. As we neared the end of our journey, the grassy hills slowly became sandy dunes, and in the path we had been walking on disappeared, heading over the last dune. We reached our destination, the beach. There were ponies scattered up and down the beach, some relaxed on towels, while others played in the cool water. A group of Pegasi had gathered a patch of clouds together and were currently diving off of them and into the lake below. There were a few humans there as well, but they were few and far between, and none of them were anywhere near the water. There they are, Twilight said, pointing at one of the smaller groups of ponies. I looked and saw that the other 5 mares were already here. Applejack and Rainbow Dash were already competing with each other, a volleyball flying back and forth between them. Pinkie Pie was cheering them on, waving flags as she acted like Pinkie Pie. She was a unique one. I'll tell you that. I had learned from Twilight that she really liked to party, and even going as far as to throw a party for each new pony to Ponyville. Luckily for me, she didn't extend this policy to humans. I spied Rarity laying on her blanket, eyes closed as she soaked up the sun. I wasn't entirely sure what that pony's Ch.10, but she was definitely trying. And then there was Fluttershy sitting beside Rarity as she watched Rainbow and Applejack play, a small smile on her face. Haha. This is probably going to be bad. We headed down the dunes and made our way towards the group. As we drew nearer, Twilight called out to her friends. Hello, every pony. Applejack, Rainbow Dash, and Pinkie Pie all stopped what they were doing to wave at Twilight, calling out their greetings. Fluttershy looked up, her face hidden behind a part of her mane, and her eyes locked onto me. There was a loud squeal-like noise, and then I was tackled by a yellow blur. I stumbled slightly as Fluttershy latched onto herself onto my chest, her hooves around my neck in a hug. I don't know what I had done to earn her affection, but ever since Twilight had taken me to her for the exam, she had been rather clingy whenever she saw me. She would always have to hug me regardless of what she had been doing all the time. Twilight had figured that it was just due to the fact that I had been malnourished and Fluttershy had been concerned for me, and I had accepted that answer with no questions asked, and it was actually kind of nice. Yeah, she cares about you. Not sure about Rarity, though. As Fluttershy nuzzled my neck, Rarity lifted her head and gazed me in disgusted glance. Laying her head back down, she groaned irritably. Twilight, dear, why did you have to bring that thing with you? She huffed, closing her eyes and turning her head slightly. Rainbow shot her an annoyed glance. Oh, come on, Rare. She can bring her human if she wants to, Applejack said, trotting over the group. Yeah, the more the merrier, Pinkie cheered, bouncing around me, a huge smile plastered on her face. I'm pretty sure it's permanent, as if I've never seen Pinkie without it. Rarity just sighed and went back to her sunbathing. That was a better reaction than what I was expecting. Fluttershy continued to cling me as Twilight placed her baggage down. Twilight opened the umbrella and placed it in the sand, creating a large shaded area. Pulling the checkered blanket out of the basket, she spread it across the shaded sand and began placing the various sandwiches and drinks that she had brought with her upon it. It seemed the others had brought food of their own as well. Soon the blanket was covered not only with Twilight sandwiches, but also cupcakes and cookies from Pinkie Pie. Applejack, true to her name and legacy, brought apple pie, apple crisp, and something that looked remarkably like an autumn cheesecake. Soon there was a veritable smorgasbord laid upon the cloth. My mouth was watering just looking at it all, but unfortunately for me, I wasn't going to be able to partake in anything as it wasn't for me. As others began to gather around the food, Twilight shot me an apologetic look. I'll save you some so you can have it later. She quickly tapped out for me as she hooked my leash to the umbrella. I flashed her a quick smile while no one was looking, and then settled down in the sand just outside of the shade of the umbrella to wait. While the girls ate and chatted with each other, I just basked in the sun and enjoying the feeling of warmth. The sand was comfortable, and I had no problem just laying around the beach. It sure beats just laying around the library. At least this way I got to go outside and blow the stink off of me. A soft thump next to me alerted me to the presence of a pony nearby. Lazily opening an eye, glanced beside me, and I saw Fluttershy sitting there, a kind smile on her face. In her hand was a plate of apple crisp and a cupcake. Behind her I saw the others watching her with curious expressions. Why are they curious? They know Fluttershy knows us and cares for us more than she wants to, I guess, in this. Fluttershy placed a plate beside me and nudged my hand with her hoof. I looked from her to the food, tilting my head to the side. I knew that she wanted me to do it, but I feigned innocence, more to see her reaction than anything else. Fluttershy is so cute. Go ahead, it's for you, she cooed, nudging my hand again. Without waiting for another prompt, I reached down and grabbed the plate. As there was no spoon provided, I was forced to use my hands, but I didn't care. The apple crisp was too delicious to bemoan not having an eating utensil. As I ate, Fluttershy scooted up beside me and leaned against my side, affectionately stroking my leg and knee with her hoof. Yes, you eat that all up, she sighed, smiling as she watched me eat. We want to make sure that you are getting plenty to eat. I glanced over at Twilight, who rolled her eyes at me. I told you she was still going on about how underfed you were when you first arrived, she signed. Her back to her friends, I resisted the urge to smirk as I finished devouring the apple crisp and turned my attention to the cupcake. The mirror might have been crazier than hell, but Pinkie sure did make a mean cupcake. Don't feed him too much, Fluttershy, Rainbow called over, her mouth full of food. You might make him fat. Don't you worry about that, Rainbow, Applejack said. A few bites of apple crisp never hurt any pony. He has been behaving well the past couple days, Twilight quipped, shooting me a quick smirk. I think he deserves a treat. Haha! I'll get you back later for that comment, Sparkle, but I'll growled in good humor. My mouth full of sugary cupcake. I finished eating and Fluttershy took the plate to the blanket. I sat in the sand, licking my hands clean off the aftermath. I'm happy to see you've been taking such a good care of him, Twilight, I heard her say as she sat back down with the group. He was in such poor condition when he first arrived, blocking out the rest of the conversation. I laid back down, closed my eyes, and proceeded to take a nap. I was awoken by the feeling of something tugging at my collar. Opening my eyes, I found Twilight trying to unhook the leash from the collar. Sorry, she whispered apologetically. I figured I'd take this off for a while, just in case you wanted to wander. Finally unhooking the leash, she flashed me a smile before heading back over to the blanket. Yawning, I sat up and stretched, wiping the sand off my back. I glanced around. While I had been asleep, the guards had finished eating and were now back to playing volleyball. It looked like it was Rainbow and Pinky against Applejack and Fluttershy. Twilight appeared to be refereeing, and Rarity still sunbathing. I glanced around, looking for something to do. When I spied the water, there weren't any ponies nearby, other than Twilight and her friends, and she did say that I was allowed to wander. It was a hot day. I was at the beach. It didn't take much more convincing than that. I took off towards the sparkling water at a dead sprint. Flying behind me, I heard Twilight shout something at me, alarming noise. But I didn't stop in my advance. I had left my shirt at the library, but I still had my sack pants on, though. I didn't really care if they got wet. I could just have Twilight dry them off with magic. And they were already as crappy as they could get. Reaching the water's edge, I splashed through shallows before diving her first into the waves. Immediately, calm and coolness washed over me. The water was refreshingly cold. Opening my eyes, I found that I could see perfectly underwater. Everything was so impossibly clear, kicking my feet. I propelled myself further out into the lake, my arms pulling me through the clear blue water. I didn't know but this lake was clearer than any pool back home, and I had the added bonus of not having any chlorine. It was fresh, it was clear, it was perfect. I could have stayed under for hours, but the sudden need to breathe drew me back to the surface. Okay, if she was yelling at you, does that mean you can't go in the water, or does that mean there's something in the water? Two things that can mean. I breached the surface, taking in great gulps of air. As I wiped the water from my eyes, I happily treaded water. I glanced back to the shore. I saw that everyone had stopped with the volleyball game and had gathered around the edge of the water. Well, not everyone. Rarity was still asleep on her blanket and oblivious to the world around her. They seemed antsy, and it was hard to tell from the distance, but they appeared to have worried expressions on their faces. Squinting closer, I noticed that someone was missing. Okay, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this situation? Max just wanted to make sense. Where's Twilight? I glanced around trying to locate this mirror. There was a flash of movement above me, and I glanced up. Twilight was airborne, flitting around as she searched the lake. What's she doing? I heard her curiosity. I eyed her curiously, watching her fly here and there, eyes scouring the lake's surface. She eventually spotted me bobbing in the air. Diving out of the sky, she streaked towards me faster than I have ever seen her move. Even that one time I had almost spilled my water on a book on the coffee table. Acting on instinct, I ducked back beneath the surface as she zoomed over her head. Hoofs skimming the water, coming back up. I watched as she quickly banked and headed back towards me. Stopping above me, she hovered in place, her eyes widened. What the fuck are you doing? She hissed, fear evident in her voice. I blinked, confused, had a broken rule. That said, no humans allowed in the lake. What do you mean? I asked, trying to sign and keep my head above the water at the same time. What do you mean? What do you mean? She growled, trying to snag me with her hooves. But I bobbed her away from her. Whatever was stressing her out, she appeared to have forgotten that she could use magic. I just don't see what the big deal is. Diving quickly, Twilight finally grabbed a hold of me and began to try and lift me out of the water. Big deal? Big deal? She wheezed, her voice panically. Of course it's a big deal. Of course it's a big deal. Humans can't swim. At this, I stared up at her incredulously. Seriously? She's getting all worked up because she thought I couldn't swim. I quickly bopped her on the nose, causing her to yelp and drop me. She looked down at me, surprised and confused. Humans can't swim? Says you. Smiling, I inhaled deeply and dived back beneath the waves, leaving Twilight hovering above. A bewildered expression on her face, kicking my legs. I flew through the water for several seconds before surfacing again. Twilight was instantly next to me, worrying on her face. I rolled my eyes and splashed some water at her. She easily avoided my attack, but still hovered nearby like a mother hen. She had a look on her face, like she was worried I might slip beneath the waves and never come back. Stop worrying, I'm fine. Splashing more water at her, I began to float lazily on my back. I hadn't had this much fun since I had arrived in Equestria, and I was going to make it last. Okay. So they think Go get a ball, I told Twilight, causing her to tilt her head at me, confusion replacing worry. I want to have some fun with you. But what do I tell the others? She asked, glancing back at the shore. Humans aren't supposed to be able to swim. I looked at the shore as well. A crowd had gathered at the water's edge, watching us with curiosity. I turned back to Twilight, shrugging my shoulders. That you are very smart unicorn who taught a human to swim? She shot me a skeptical look. Wait, what? That you are a very smart alicorn who taught a human to swim? She shot me a skeptical look. I shrugged again, then went back to floating. I don't really care what you tell them. I was just hoping for a ball. Twilight sighed and flew back to the shore. I watched as she landed, and I was immediately swarmed and chuckled to myself. Closing my eyes, I drifted lazily through the water. I had been drifting there for several minutes before something splashing down next to me. Glancing over, I smiled as I saw a volleyball floating there. Twilight hovered nearby, looking at me with an irritated expression. There, I got your ball, she huffed, glaring down at me. Happy? I nodded, smiling. I swam and grabbed a hold of the ball. The minute it was in my hands, I launched it up towards Twilight. She squawked, swooping to avoid the ball. It splashed down into the water again, and I immediately swam over to retrieve it. What the fuck was that for? Twilight growled, anger clear in her eyes, grabbing the ball again. I turned towards the enraged mare. Play with me, Twilight blinked, her anger vanishing instantly. A small blush slowly covered her face as she looked down at me, her mouth agape. What? She stuttered, causing me to chuckle. I tossed the ball up to her again, and this time, she caught it. Play with me, I repeated, still smiling. I want to play a game with you. Twilight looked between me and the ball, her face still red. Realization dawns on her face, and she smiles down at me. I guess I could spare some time, she said, tossing the ball into the air. It landed in the water with a splash, and I swam towards it. Grabbing it, I launched it back up to Twilight, who laughed as she caught it in her hooves. Both of us smiled at each other as we tossed the ball back and forth. A pony and her human. Okay, if you're smiling, that's bad. Apparently, that's bad. We continued to toss the ball back and forth for the rest of the afternoon. Rainbow Dash joined us shortly after we started, and we soon had an actual game going. Rainbow Dash and I would toss the ball back and forth between us as Twilight tried to intercept it without using her magic. The crowd of ponies on the beach dispersed slowly as we played, heading back to their original spots on the beach, or some just heading home for the day. Fluttershy, Applejack, and Pinkie Pie remained at the edge of the water, however, dipping their hooves in the water as they watched. Rarity had remained asleep through the whole thing. The sun had started to sink towards the horizon when the three of us finally decided to head for shore. I was exhausted from swimming so much, but I didn't care. I had enjoyed myself. I had some fun bonding time with Twilight and Rainbow Dash. The mares flew above me, Rainbow holding the ball as Twilight kept an eye on me as I swam. Even after spending several hours swimming around the lake, as she was still slightly worried that I would sink beneath the waves, I stumbled out of the water and onto the beach. I was assaulted by a worried Fluttershy who had to check me over to make sure that I wasn't injured or hurt in any way. Finding nothing wrong with me except exhaustion, she lashed onto me, tears in her eyes. I thought we lost you, she sniffed, looking at me with big, watery eyes. I winced heartily. Damn, now I feel like an ass. Rainbow Dash came to my rescue, though. Oh, come on, Fluttershy, it's not like he was going to drown, she said, hovering beside my head. But Rainbow Dash, she whined, gazing up at the rainbow mare. Humans aren't supposed to be able to swim. They just sink. Her grip on me tightened, and she buried her head in my chest. You heard Twilight, Fluttershy, Rainbow said, rolling her eyes. She taught him how to swim before coming out here, and when has Twilight Sparkle ever failed at doing something she set her mind to? Fluttershy opened her mouth to reply, but Rainbow Dash cut her off. Besides, humans may be stupid, but they wouldn't do anything that could kill them. If he didn't know how to swim, I doubt he would have gone into the water like that. What happened next stunned me completely. Okay, what's gonna happen next? Where am I? Okay, right there. Rainbow Dash, the most awesome pony in all of Ponyville, swooped down and nuzzled my cheek, gazing at me within her magenta eyes. She smiled tenderly at me. It's so nice to know you're okay, big guy, she said before blushing and zooming off. I glanced down at the others and see that they are all staring after Rainbow Dash, their jaws on the ground. They were as speechless as I was, and that's saying something. Applejack was the first to recover. I think that I better get going too, as she said, turning to Twilight. I'll wake up Rarity and we go save Spike from the Crusaders. Nodding to the others, Applejack walked over to Rarity and nudged her awake. The way Unicorn Mare sat up, groaning slightly as she stood. Even through her coat, I could see a bit of red underneath. She winced as she and Applejack began to walk home. Yup. She was sunburned, alright, and it looked painful. Serves her right, I sniggered to myself as I watched her limp off. Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy both said goodbyes before heading off. Twilight magicked everything into the basket and closed up the umbrella. She reattached the leash to my collar, and we started the long journey back to the library. As we walked, I glanced over to Twilight and saw a smile on her face. Walking closer to her, I bumped into her gently. "What are you smiling at?" Twilight looked up at me and her smile grew. "I was just thinking of how much fun I had today," she giggled. "I didn't know you could have that much fun at the beach." "You learn something new every day," I sniggered, stifling a yawn. All the swimming and playing had taken a lot out of me, and I couldn't wait to get home and crawl into bed. "Yeah," Twilight said, her ears drooping slightly along with her head. "Something new." She was silent for several seconds before turning back to me, her smile no longer present. She looked up at me through her bangs. "You really scared me with that stunt you pulled." I raised an eyebrow at her, confused. Twilight sighed and rubbed her head against my leg as we continued to talk. Okay, where were I? Continued to walk. "I thought I had lost you when you dove into the lake," she whispered, tears starting to well up in her eyes. "Even though we have only known each other for a few weeks, I couldn't bear the thought of something bad happening to you." I reached down and scratched behind the ear. She flicked the ear and giggled, the smile reappearing on her face. "I'm sorry I scared you. I didn't know that humans here couldn't swim. Back home, most humans can actually swim very well." "It's okay," Twilight said, wiping the tears from her eyes with a hoof. "Just don't do anything like that again without telling me first." "I promise." The rest of the walk home was silent, both of us quiet. As we walked through the deserted marketplace, Twilight leaned into my leg. I placed a hand on the back of her head, scratching her behind the ears gently. She hummed contentedly as she leaned more into my leg, her head pressing into my hand. We remained like this all the way to the library. Once inside, Twilight removed the leash before flinging it. The basket and the umbrella went to a corner. The sound of snoring upstairs informed us that Spike was already home and out like a light. By someone's spoken agreement, we both head towards our respective rooms. Reaching the basement door, Twilight nudged me one more time in the leg. "Good night, Max," she murmured, a tired smile on her face. "Thanks for allowing me to have fun with you today." "Good night, Twilight," I signed, yawning. Thanks for taking me with you." We flashed each other one more smile before I headed down into the basement, and Twilight headed up to her room. Reaching my bed, I flung back the covers and sunk into the bed, snuggling down into the coolness of the sheets. I closed my eyes and then sighed happily. It had been a fun day at the beach, and I had a blast with the mirrors, even if they didn't know the whole truth, but I was happy to be back at the library. No, I realized as I felt myself drift slowly off to sleep. Not the library. Home, sighing again. I let sleep take me and drift off into dreamland, a happy smile on my tired face. I was home. The end. Okay. Chapter 10 was more fun-filled. Anyways, hopefully you guys have enjoyed that. Man, what was I gonna say? I don't know. Anyways, guys, there's things Max doesn't know about the equestrian humans that we have to find out, because right now everybody just saw him swim and they think he can't swim, or that they can't swim. So that's something to worry about when he does anything that seems normal to us, but not normal to Equestria and the ponies. Anyways, hopefully you all have enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video or chapter. Bye bye. Goodbye.
100,000 stories have filled my head as I look for the answer in what I've read. Secretly waiting for my life to change, and with this transformation